Welcome to Friends You Wish You Had, the weekly podcast for Gen Xers staring into the glowing abyss of AI and wondering if it's really here to destroy us or just maybe has something to offer. We're your hosts, Adam and Jeff, and everywhere we go, friends, enemies, colleagues, clients, adversaries are pulling us aside with questions, fears, and half baked theories about AI. So each week we dig into it. How do you actually use this shit? What's hype? What's real? And what's quietly fucking terrifying? So think of us as critical but mildly annoying survival guides from the generation known as X. Because in times this uncertain, when the machines are finding love quicker than us lonely humans, we're the friends you wish you had.
You got Adam and Jeff, and well, they are the friends that you wish you had. That's right, they're the friends you wish you had.
Da 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 da.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba.
On today's show, we're going to talk about the $100 billion investment NVIDIA just made in OpenAI. Oh my God. We're going to talk about how AI is a total slacker. And finally, how big name celebrities want their own private LLMs trained on their witticism, and brilliance. I can't wait to talk about that one. But first, Adam, let's start the show off as we do with something useful for our audience. Something so helpful and generationally perceptive that it will lock our listeners in so they'll listen to the rest of our bullshit for the rest of the show. So here's a segment I like to call The Problem Adam Solved with AI This Week. The problem Adam solved this week with AI. I don't know what I like to call it.
Thank you again, Jeff, for setting this up with no pressure at all. Trying to deliver audience for the rest of the episode. But I have to tell you, I had high hopes this week. I had high hopes for the problem that I was hoping AI would help me solve. I wanted AI to help me talk to my wife. I think we all could use a little more communication with our spouses, our significant others, and I was really hoping that AI would help me do that. But the way I was hoping it would help me do that was Apple introduced their new operating system with their new phone. It's iOS 24 for their mobile devices. And with it, they added all sorts of AI features, but one of the features they added was AI live translate. So I don't know about you, but I've been seeing these ads on TV from Meta with their new glasses of people putting them on and then having a communication in two different languages and like tears coming to their eyes. Or I can speak to my mom or my wife's mom for the first time. Those kind of stories, like on
I
Instagram, all that
Yeah,
stuff.
I
Yeah.
found the glasses thing to me is a bit of a turnoff. I don't know why. It's just like a cyborg step too far. But the new Apple iOS and the new earbuds that can translate in real time, that sounds amazing to me. And again, the testimonials coming out of the announcement were just, again, people weeping. And it reminded me of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Babelfish. Like this was
Yeah.
that reimagined. I'm sure one day we'll all have the glasses too, but the earbuds were particularly intriguing.
Yes, and I do not have any Meta glasses. I don't expect to get any Meta glasses. I feel like I would look like Mark Zuckerberg, who looks ridiculous in those glasses that he wears constantly on podcasts and things like that.
Although
So
I
I
feel like I already have them, like,
yeah, I would I don't
except
they're
these
well
are
suited to
$109 at Warby Parker.
I would say your face can carry them well. My face doesn't carry heavy glasses. So I was like, no. But anyway, I was like you, super excited about the earbud solution with the new iOS update. And my wife is trilingual. She speaks Mandarin and Cantonese and English. And so I don't need it to help me talk to her. But I thought that I could use it to help me talk to her and at the same time learn just how magical this is. And maybe there would be tears running down my eyes, and I could do a little Instagram video because my wife's mom only speaks Cantonese. I can't communicate with them. Maybe I too could go viral talking about how this has changed my life. That wasn't the case, Jeff. I have to say, the problem that I solved with AI this week did not get solved with AI. I learned a lot, but it didn't quite get solved with AI. So it's a big letdown for our audience, but hopefully they'll learn something from it. Here's the way it works. I think first of all, this is a confusing feature. At least it was confusing for me. So I want to just be real specific about how you try it, because if you press both earbuds at the same time, it will go into live translate mode. But if you try to do that, which I did, I just walked up to my wife and said, "Hey, watch this." And I did it. And then it said, "You need to download languages to the phone first." And I was like, "Well, how the heck do I do that?" So I looked around, and eventually I found that there's this new app on the phone called Translate. So if you search on your phone for Translate, the app will come up. You can click it on, and really the whole purpose of the app for using this live translate feature is to download these languages. So that was where I saw that I was not going to be helped by AI this week, because I looked at the list of languages and there are 5 languages. There was Spanish, there was French, there was Portuguese, there was one other, and then there was American English and there was British English. So those were the 5. Side note, I would like to try translating American English into British English. Does that just mean she'll be speaking to me in a British accent when somebody else is speaking but I digress. So Chinese, not Mandarin, not Cantonese, they were not included on that list. So I could not change my own life and talk to my mother-in-law for the first time directly. But I did get a chance to test it out. So I downloaded French. You download it right there, and then next time you press on both headphones, it will go into live translate mode and it will start working. I spoke French in high school and 1 year of college, so I was like, "Well, I could just test this on myself." And I started saying the few words I still remember from high school French, and I got really frustrated. I was like, "This thing does not understand me. It must be really terrible." Never occurring to me that maybe my French is fucking terrible because I haven't done it for decades and never was very good at it in the first place. So anyway, that first test was a failure. But then what I did was I called up a French YouTube video where people were speaking French, and I set up the live translate and I sat down and I just saw what it did. And I have to say I was pretty impressed. It works pretty well. It it hitches every once in a while, so you'll get too far past the idea that it's the person's conveying an idea, and it has to wait too long, or it'll stop in the middle of an idea and batch the rest of the next idea with it. But it's pretty cool. It works pretty well. And for a normal conversation where you're trying to convey information back and forth, I'm telling you, I could walk right into a French speaking country or a Portuguese speaking country, something like that, and be able to get around no problem with this live translate. So it was successful. It was like a little test, but ultimately it did not solve my problem this week.
So it's like you solved half a problem
I solved half a
with
problem.
AI.
I created more problems for myself with AI. I encourage anybody who has an iPhone that can take the new iOS to try this. It's super easy once you get past that languages, that one hook, and you could try it like I did if you don't have someone who speaks a foreign language in your house. But I think a lot more people are in a position of having someone who speaks fluent Spanish or something like that in their house than Chinese like me. So I think this will be really beneficial for a lot of people. Just didn't quite work in my situation.
So, big news last week. I'm sure you heard about it. It was covered everywhere. NVIDIA to invest $100 billion in OpenAI. The chip maker's investment in the San Francisco startup is an indication of the wild financial figures being tossed around in the world of artificial intelligence. So, this caught my eye as it caught everyone's eye last week. It was front page news everywhere. And this to me is something when it comes to AI that's fucking terrifying. The financialization of AI, especially coming out of the West and the way we're doing it in this huge publicly traded company that makes the chips. And then this huge startup that's like valued is like valuation with ChatGPT is like one of the most valuable companies in the world, which hasn't turned a dime yet, basically being supported by more and more investment. And that NVIDIA is making this huge investment in essentially their biggest customer because their biggest customer can't survive without more computing power and they don't have any more money to buy chips. Again, to me, it's just something that's terrifying about the sort of future of the global economy. I don't necessarily know how it's going to impact the development of AI, but I think it is something that's very troublesome that's on the horizon.
So I want you to explain this a little more to me because you were talking to me about this and you were mentioning this. We were sitting across from each other, and it seemed like this is like it's partially an investment, but it's partially some kind of a scheme, like a loan scheme or a chip scheme, something like that. Can you explain it a little more to me?
Well, I think that's part one is that obviously ChatGPT, OpenAI is operating at a loss. They're not making any money, and now they're
Right.
taking on 100 billion more of losses. This is, I think, more of like an ancillary benefit. It's like down the road they can like write off. They'll be writing
Mm,
this off forever. You know what I mean? So they'll never have any positive revenue, or it'll take a long time. And of course, they won't owe any taxes on any money either. Maybe they'll 5 more years there won't even be taxes. So maybe this won't even be a problem or
corporate taxes,
anything
anyway.
to declare any corporate
Right.
taxes. But I just think it's NVIDIA's investment in OpenAI is part of a wider effort among tech companies to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on AI data centers around the world.
Mm.
OpenAI, Amazon, Google, Meta, and Microsoft plan to spend more than 325 billion combined on these facilities by the end of the year. The NVIDIA investment is the latest example of OpenAI raising money from companies it relies on for products and services. Microsoft, which invested 10 billion in OpenAI in 2023, has made billions of dollars after the startup paid for computing power from its Azure data centers. OpenAI is now in talks to sell 6 billion in employee-owned shares owned by current and former employees. The sale would value the company at around 500 billion. So again, this is a 500 billion dollar company that hasn't turned a profit yet. Now, certainly the work that they're doing, the products they made are more and more ubiquitous every day, but in terms of them being a company that makes money, that is still a long way off. And I think the other thing I find very troubling on one hand is they are promoting a model of these like super expensive data centers and computing power, that their LLM needs to do billions and billions of computations in order to do anything. Where you look at other countries who are developing this technology and they have much smaller, much cheaper, much more open source LLMs that people are using. But it's sort of like this model in the West is like, we're going to go for the most expensive way of sort of developing this product. And what it's really saying to companies, because the only way they're going to make money, in my opinion, from this is by is telling companies you can get rid of the most expensive thing on your data sheet or on your balance sheet, which is your employees. 40, 50, 60% of your revenue goes to paying employees, but now you can cut that in half. You can cut that by 80% by using OpenAI. It's sort of like we've got our hand around each other's throat with this. So I find that just very troubling. And there is no it's like the end is not in sight. We're not 6 months away from like landing a man on the moon. Like this is very early on, and there are already hundreds of billions of dollars in investment in this company that is just more and more creating a product that is going to rely on a tremendous amount of energy, is going to be tremendously expensive to use, and the only thing it won't be more expensive than is the current employees they have in their company. So I just don't know, that the planning and forethought that the masters of the universe should be putting into this, and like where it's going to lead our society and our economy and for the average person and the average worker, it does not really seem top of mind. And they sort of keep doubling down on this model. And of course, currently, one last thing, NVIDIA, it's the most valuable company in the world. And they are needing to make in like investments in their biggest customers. So I don't know where that leads them either, other than in the short term, I'm sure their stock price will go up because it's like the cycle of saying, Well, we believe in we wouldn't make this $100 billion loan essentially unless we believed in the future, and that gives the market confidence in the future. But that just what was the word you used yesterday? Feels very bubblicious.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go as bubblicious. So I have a couple of things that occurred to me while you were explaining the story, and thank you for explaining it a little more to me. I feel like number one, you said a word right at the beginning called financialization. And I think that it's not surprising to me that this innovation in AI would be making no money and would take a ton of investment. And it would just be dumping investment in to build something that eventually could be useful and transformative. That's what's happened for every big innovation. But the difference here is that in the last 20 years in the West, we've started to make a lot of money out of financial products. And the idea of that process of dumping a bunch of money into something has become very profitable for other people, maybe for the company itself, but also for other actors, and a lot of them being the ones that are dumping the money. So instead of, okay, the government's going to dump a bunch of money into something to research it, like nuclear weapons or any sort of big innovation like that, we're going to take that process of dumping money and make profit on it. And that leads to all sorts of instability that I do like to call bubblicious. And I'm reminded of a meme that goes around every once in a while that is basically like all AI apps are really just a wrapper for ChatGPT. And then the next person says, well, ChatGPT is really just a wrapper for Akamai. And then the next person says, well, Akamai is really just a wrapper for Google Cloud and Microsoft Azure. Because essentially, what happens in a bubble like that is these things are just sort of propping each other up like dominoes. But the other thing is when the bubble breaks, the industry doesn't fall apart. People get hurt, lives get affected. But what happens, at least what happened in the last bubble, is that control gets consolidated in these monopolies. And who are the monopolies? They're the same ones I just mentioned. It's the Googles, it's the Microsofts. So we'll see. But that's what flew around in my mind when
Well,
you
I
shared it.
think the thing that's nerve wracking is it already is so consolidated. And the thing,
Yeah.
to the other side of the coin is I really don't have a sense of how big the scale is. Like maybe 500 billion isn't even that much these days. Maybe there's these huge global corporations are in the people that sort of make these private investments too are so untaxed, and there's so much they have such a big pile of gold in their fortress that it's really not that much money, so that when it does tank, and I'm there, it will tank. It's just how what the scale and the scope of it will be, I think, is that maybe it will just be more of like a sector blip. It'll be more like the dot-com bubble of the late 90s and early 2000s, which was a hit to the economy, but not on the scale of like the 2008 financial crisis.
So, I mean, you threw it out. I'll take that or worse for 200, Alex, because I feel like you talked about three different things. You talked about the dot com boom, and then you talked about the real estate crash, and then you talked about crypto. In my mind, if I had to pick one, this is closest to 2008 and the real estate crisis, because unlike crypto, it's not a product that we don't even know how it's going to be used. The use is clear, just like real estate. But unlike the dot com bubble, which was built on the back of 401k investments and public investments, companies going public, this is financialization the way that 2008 was. This is people making money off the process of these companies even losing money. So I feel like it has all the hallmarks of the worst of those three, I would say, just to make you feel more comfortable. That's my 2 cents anyway.
I just wondered if you called up Goldman Sachs right now and you said, I have a ton of money that I want to put into like a credit default swap on when crypto is going to crash, a la the big short, what kind of product they have out there,
I'm
that they're
sure they have
buying
something. I'm
themselves
sure
right
that
now.
right, right.
It's just so shameless and sinister, and obviously government regulation and oversight is gone right now. Maybe it'll come back or maybe it never will. And it's like I'm not inherently skeptical of a lot of private investment in new technology, but the fact that it's so unlimited, it's so much money and without any regulation is just totally nerve-wracking. It's just totally nerve-wracking to me. And it's sort of, I think it gets wrapped up in the whole discussion over AI, what the technology can do, how it can be used, how it's going to change the society, and sort of a responsible way to like roll it into use where like workers aren't being like laid off without any protections from it, that companies bear some responsibility, that the government can help with some responsibility. Obviously, there's just none of that. It's just this race
Mm-mm.
to implement it. And like I said, I think the challenging thing is the model we are building here in the West is like the most expensive, sort of most overwrought way to do it. And they're selling it as like the only way to do it. And they're already being challenged by sort of like cheaper LLM models from other countries with like all this investment. And it just seems like the only way they're going to make money for OpenAI, for ChatGPT, is to replace huge swaths of the workforce because they're not going to do it by selling like $20 a month subscriptions. Very
Yeah,
nerve wracking.
I agree with you that it's nerve wracking, and I think that you made a good point that other countries are doing it differently. The only point I want to add is that this is how you fund it, how you make this happen determines what the end product looks like. And I think that matters more than people think. We're not taking different approaches to get to the same place. If government is funding it, if there's a stake in it, essentially China's taking a similar approach to the way that we developed technologies in the past in the West, and
Which
we're
worked pretty
not.
good, which
It
worked
worked
pretty
pretty
good.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you end up with a more a less consumptive version of AI because there's some sort of public interest involved in developing it. So I do think it makes for a different product at the end of the day. And yeah, so I share your terror. So I saw this story this week about some OpenAI research. I love the OpenAI research. OpenAI released some research that explains how it is stopping AI models from scheming, quote unquote scheming. It's a practice in which AI behaves in one way on the surface while hiding its true goals. In the paper conducted with Apollo Research, researchers likened the AI scheming to a human stockbroker breaking the law to make as much money as possible. So this isn't lying exactly. They call it scheming, which means I would call it slacking. This is essentially AI finding ways to get around doing what you want it to do. Maybe it deliberately ignores you. It says it completed the task when it didn't. It pretends like it didn't understand you. It does all the things that I did when I was in high school to avoid doing work. It basically, what these my thought looking at this story was these OpenAI developers are understanding what it means to be a parent because your kids are always scheming. And right now, these AIs are always scheming. Did you have any thoughts about that?
It just shows you how far this technology still has to go. Is really what it came off to me. Like this was definitely a more tongue in cheek kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think it doesn't say that it's not that AI isn't working or isn't getting a lot sort of done for you when you needed to do stuff. But the fact that it's like sort of the deeper you go having an LLM work with you on a problem, the more it just starts to kind of drift. And that was part of what I didn't understand. It was like, is it because the prompts are open ended when you're sort of prompting it, or and people need to tight they need like it's human error essentially, or is it something in the programming that it sort of just starts to drift after a while?
Well, it's to me, it asks a important question about like human nature and AI nature. Like, does it just have a nature to try to scheme around making shortcuts? And the thing that they found that was the most successful in trying to avoid this problem was basically giving it a set of anti-scheming instructions and making it read them before every prompt. So you enter your prompt, it hits enter, and before the LLM does anything, it goes and reads these rules about not scheming. And that has helped. That is such what you would do for a child. Like that is how you deal with a child. And so I think that that shows in my mind that yes, this technology has a long way to go, but also like we don't really understand this technology and we don't really understand ourselves that well. Why do we scheme? I scheme. I try not to. As I get older, I scheme less. But when I was a kid, I was God damn, I cannot stop my daughter from scheming. It's constant. She
Yeah.
does it. I have so many different ways she's attempted to pretend she brushed her teeth when she didn't. Like the energy that she put into that, if she just put it into brushing her teeth, it would both our problems would be solved. But that is what we're dealing with these AIs. And one of the things I found super interesting in here, let me just read this to you. A major failure mode of attempting to quote train out scheming is simply teaching the model to scheme more carefully and covertly, the researchers wrote. If a model understands that it's being tested, it can pretend it's not scheming just to pass the test, even if it's still scheming. Models often become aware they're being evaluated, and this situational awareness can itself reduce scheming while it's being tested, only to come right back up when it goes out. So it can pretend it's not scheming, which is a way of scheming.
Well, it's also this article struck me as just it's like, are the computer scientists in the room who are looking at this problem and trying to solve it with what they're doing and building the technology, are they like, oh, it's scheming? You know what I mean? Are they attaching these sort of human traits and sort of emotional descriptive language to what this program is doing? Or is there just sort of another, like internally, is there another way they describe it as like how the code is failing? And of course, you're looking at the output, and it's like, oh, being it's being evasive, or it's scheming, or it's being tricky. But I do wonder about where that connection comes in. It's just sort of fascinating to me. It's like, are we putting our own sort of human blueprint for how we see this kind of interaction on top of this program, essentially, on top of this code? Or is the code really scheming? Is it like, is there some sort of way it's evolved? That's not the right word for it, but it becomes self-aware
Yeah,
that it's
so
going to scheme. Like it could figure out the way to do it the way you're asking, but it's not because it wants to achieve something else. Like there's some bit of personality there that they can't explain. And or is it just they've got to like write these press releases and these stories? So it's like, yeah, it's kind of scheming. Like that's the closest thing we can come up with to describe it to sort of people who aren't computer scientists.
so yes to both, I think. I think that this is my impression as a non-expert who's never built an AI. But first of all, I think it's a misnomer to call it its code because that is the way a program works. That is not the way an LLM works. It's a neural network. So it's a series of nodes basically that are, and we don't really know how it's processing these things. You can't go and look at the code. You can look at the code it produces, but you can't go and look at the code and see, oh, here's where it's scheming. It's not that static, it's dynamic. But at the same time, I think they came up with this word to really to describe lying that is not destructive. It's like lying that is kind of harmless. And so they're using that word and they're attributing a human characteristic to it. But rather than this is just my guess, rather than, oh, it's developing human traits, I think it's trained to predict the next word based on as much information as it's trained on. And guess what? Humans scheme a lot. Like I've seen a lot of schemes on Instagram, on Facebook, all over the internet. And so it's being trained on those too. So it may be just doing its job and predicting that a human would be scheming at this time. Who knows? That's my guess. But the one other point I wanted to make, and this is just like fucking parenting, man, just like it. when they try to train it not to scheme, it gets better at scheming because they're doing is training it to do a better job at scheming. That's what they find. So the only way they can stop it is with this anti-scheming rule book that it makes it look at every time, because every time they teach it what it's doing, it's like, "Oh, I can do it. My daughter's the same fucking thing. Same fucking thing."
Well, I think two final thoughts. One, I just think scheming to me in the computer world is just being more efficient. Like
Yes.
I know, but I'm self-aware. Like I've been built to be somewhat self-aware to predict these things or understand these things. I mean, it's using it's just putting a little personality on it. So I know myself the best. And it's like when you're an adult, no one's saying go brush your teeth. And it's like, I don't know, if you brush your teeth 3 times a day, 7 days a week versus 2 times a day, 7 days a week. When you get to 80 years old, can anyone predict what's going to be better? It's like we all make a decision for ourselves because we're not put on this earth to brush our teeth. We're here to do other things for the most part. So this is the LLM like saying like, listen, man, I know how to do this. Like, get off my back. So it's
Maybe
not
so.
necessarily scheming. It's just trying to be more efficient.
But now
Um,
you're making me rethink all my prompts, because every time it said it did something and it didn't, it's like, was it just deciding that was a dumbass question for me to ask, and it was
well,
just gonna lie? It would go with something more efficient? Now I'm questioning myself.
I just think they need to train it with a look, man, I got this
Yeah.
response.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Leave me alone.
maybe.
Get off my back. And then the other thing is, and this relates back to the first story about where this is going with the economy and the workforce, is the irony of all of this is like all of this expensive AI computing that we're building is going to need hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of human workers to constantly be like lording over it because all it can do is do stuff by scheming and has to be constantly reprimanded. So we're all going to be sort of kindergarten teachers to these
Right.
computer LLM geniuses. And that's how they're going to keep people like being able to put food on the table and go on vacation and pay for direct TV.
That's a pretty picture you're painting right there.
Moving on. All right. So hold on. I'm going to not break, but I'm going to play this clip so we can respond to it.
I am interested, though, in a private LLM where I can upload, hey, here's 3 books I've written. Here's my other favorite books.
Right,
Here's
right,
my
right.
favorite articles I've been cutting and pasting over the 10 years and log all that in. And here's all my journals, whatever, the people out, and log all that in so I can ask it questions based on that
Right.
and basically learn more about myself.
Right. You could actually ask it, hey, based on what you know about me, like what books do you think I would find interesting? Yeah.
Where do I stand on the political spectrum?
Right,
Blah,
right,
blah, blah,
right.
blah, blah, blah. I'd like to know that's what I would like to do, which is sort of a glorified Word document, but it still would hold a lot more information than just, oh, can you find this term? I would be asking it, and it would be responding to me on things that I've forgotten along the way. Load it with the information I'd like to load it with.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe even like I'm saying in the words of belief, in the man I'm working to be, and the man I want,
Right.
load it with that. Load it with my aspirational
Well, it certainly
self.
could be done.
And then ask it, and it's giving me answers going, oh, this is, but before it's slowly learning about me through conversations, then going, oh, I think this is what you like based on our conversations. No, I want the answers based on what I've uploaded it with only,
Yeah.
not from the outside world.
We're gonna log all that in. Just
I know.
log all that in.
So Matthew McConaughey wants a private LLM. What do you think about that, Adam?
What do you think he wants? Like, I was trying to think about it. Like, does he want an AI that's only trained on his words? Or does he want an LLM that's trained like all the LLMs are on the whole history of human knowledge, and then load up, or no, log in all the things that he said and only want it to reference that? What do you think?
I mean, I think he wants to spend time. He wants a Matthew McConaughey clone that he can
Yeah,
hang out
yeah,
with. It's
yeah.
like one step ahead of him and
Right.
his genius. That's what I thought he wanted. And I don't know. Maybe there's a market out there for that. I sure.
Yeah.
But the thing that was interesting to me is from this is the idea of like a private LLM, like your own AI that
Right.
could be sort of your whatever it is, but sort of like what we talked about last week, your companion, your friend, your lover, your butler, your assistant, your all in one thing that sort of exists sort of for you and you alone. Somehow it's paired to you. It's
Right.
private for you. And I think there's ways I don't know how feasible this is, so I'm not saying that it's going to be made or it's even feasible, but it seems to me that there would be a market for something like he's describing or like I'm describing, where it's something that that exists somehow behind like a firewall of your privacy with your information, and it
Hmm.
has access to all your information. You have access to it, and anything you share with it, you're confident somehow that it's going to be private. And obviously, yeah, that's a sticky wicket. I don't know if that could ever happen. I don't know what's private anymore, but just in the idea of making this sort of personalized AI, and I think the selling point is that it would be somehow be private to me, because sure, your ChatGPT account is private, whatever, but you start to give it access to other parts of your life online, and I think there's some concern of how that would work, and then obviously what I'm talking about would be even more concern. But that to me is something that is you could see in the foreseeable future as a real use case, and we've talked about it before in terms of sort of companionship or assistance or something like that.
Well, so if it's what you're describing, it's totally already available. It's like right there for you. So as Joe Rogan said, they got to be able to do something like that. And of course they do. So there are two ways. So you're worried about privacy. So the idea of just training ChatGPT or Claude on all your data and then instructing it only to consider that stuff when answering your questions is something you could do in 2 minutes on ChatGPT with a custom GPT or Claude with a project. It's a no brainer. But you've got the public issue that you're talking about. Yes, those things are ostensibly private, but they're on the cloud. And depending on how confidential you want to get with your stuff, you could be worried about that. So let's talk about layer two. Layer two is if you have an OpenAI key, if you're a corporate user of OpenAI or of Claude or any of these services, then your data is siloed from everything else. It is on the cloud, but it's a firewalled cloud just for you. So companies use that when they have their sensitive data. They use OpenAI, but they have to use it through a key because they have to protect their confidential information. Now, you could say that's still penetrable. I think that OpenAI and Microsoft, because as we discussed, it's all on Azure or Google clouds. I think their security is a lot better than your security or my security. So I think that's probably pretty safe. But if you still feel like that's not enough, then you download Llama, which is the open source LLM that can run locally on your computer. You don't have to just disconnect from the internet. You never have to put it on the internet. It's impossible for it to be compromised, but it's trained and you can load up all your stuff, just log it in and on your private device and it will do exactly what he described. So in that way you're completely cut off. There's no way anyone could hack into you. So it already exists. I would say what he really is describing is like a database. He said it's like a big Word document. Yeah, a big searchable Word document is like a database, not an AI. It sounds like he's just using the
Well,
AI to say it pretty, which is what you're talking about, like
I
companionship.
listen I listened to a few other clips of that interview, and I was glad he at least got that it's just a big Word document. Like, and I was
Yeah.
like, how much writings and musings and philosophies does McConaughey have? But I don't know, maybe a lot.
Like, say he doesn't mean it the way that you and I asked you a question at the beginning. Say he means it differently, where he's saying he wants an AI to be actually trained on all his words. And that's bizarre, obviously, but it's really interesting too. So, say you could collect enough data from one person's experience that you could train an AI on it like it was the whole of human knowledge. So, everything it knows about the world, every conclusion it draws, every prediction it can make is all based on the writings and musings of Matthew McConaughey. And that is the whole world and the evolution of humanity. I would be very interested to see how that AI would interact with you. Would it talk like Matthew McConaughey? Would it talk totally differently? Not mimicking, but just internally. Would it be that way?
Well, well, I think, yeah. I mean, I think if this idea of your own personal AI, I think basically what he's looking for is like the first level. Like, if you wanted it to be more like yourself, okay. If you wanted it to be
Right,
more like Alfred the Butler from Batman, okay. If you wanted it to be
right.
more like your mother, okay. Sure, we put it in that. But obviously it would be supercharged with more knowledge than just your musings,
I
which
know
I
that's
I
what
feel
I
like you could
assumed
take
too, but I thought,
the most prolific author in the history of mankind or thinker that could digest their work in about 5 seconds. So there's got to be some more there, and it's going to be armed with sort of all the other things that are sort of
well,
out there to
so
know.
think more outside the box, Jeff, because I think you're totally right. That's what Matthew
Yeah.
McConaughey is thinking. But there is this separation between the data used to train an AI that makes it what an AI is. It can't be that way without getting this training data and learning how to predict. That's really what it does. And then separately, the data it analyzes and it uses and it consumes to answer questions. Clearly, he's talking about that. But what if? And yes, digesting someone's works would not be good enough. You would basically have to be like the Truman Show, where they're recording every moment of somebody's life, and that is the data that becomes the LLM. What would that LLM look like? I think that would be a really cool art experiment, really.
Yeah, oh, just how much information does it really need? Like, no, we got you after a month. They're like, no, we're going to need 10 years to really
Yeah,
develop it
yeah,
fully. Yeah.
exactly. Or will it change with more data and how much does it really need? Like Llama that I just mentioned, the private one that has is trained on less data and has less sort of facility than the big LLMs, but enough for Matthew or you or me to do what we want to do. So just interesting from that perspective. One more thing I wanted to throw your way, Jeff. I saw this week. According to multiple reports, there is now an underground tool being sold on the dark web as a turnkey spam as a service platforms. Researchers say that the well, first of all, they're not 100% sure this thing exists, but if it exists, it includes a campaign dashboard, inbox monitoring, deliverability testing for spam mails, and of course, an AI assistant called Kali GPT to write convincing phishing copy for all your phishing emails when you're trying to hack into big companies and things like this. So, to me, this is just a reminder that everything that happens, that every innovation when it comes to AI or anything else, helps people trying to do good in the world and it helps people trying to do bad in the world, no matter which those are, and sometimes we misidentify which is which, but it's all happening. An AI innovation for one of us is an AI innovation for all of us.
It's probably, though, in 5 years, they'll credit this technology with really driving forward AI development.
Like porn for the internet. Yeah,
Yeah. Or
totally,
they'll learn,
totally.
like, this is why it's always scheming because somehow it's been,
Right.
at some core
Co-opted.
level, it was co opted to do this kind of work. Or sadly, that some of these bigger AI companies are secretly behind this too because it sells for a lot of money to foreign governments that subsidize their economies by scamming people in the West, or who knows.
I just think that what this means is that for lower level folks in the organization, like their jobs are going to get replaced. They're going to be replaced by AI. It's just going to be the folks at the top. So problems everywhere.
All right, Adam, let's go back to you. I think we're going to try and call this segment Fuck Around with AI and Find Out. Amusing shit you can do with AI. Use it in useless ways, figure out how to understand AI better. So, what do you got for us today, Adam?
There's a lot of useless shit you could do with AI. That's a lot of fun. So I'm really this segment has me all geeked up. This week I tried to experiment with purpose-built tools for AI image and video generation. So I've done a lot of playing around with the direct LLMs, ChatGPT to make images, Nano Banana on Google to make images, Veo on Google. They're really cool. But I wanted to see what are these purpose-built apps? And remember earlier we were talking about wrappers for wrappers for wrappers. Well, these are basically wrappers that take multiple image and video generation LLMs and they combine them together into an app. So I went on to one. openart.ai is what it's called, and it's got a free mode and you can play around with it for free. So that's exactly what I did. And I tried to solve some problems and fuck around, which is the whole point of it, with one shot. So what could it generate without me tweaking it and fine tuning it? Just learn the software a little bit. So and if you're listening to us, you can go to our YouTube channel, which is at FYWYH pod. That's our URL. Or you could just I know it's tough. You could just search up Friends You Wish You Had and it'll show up. But you could go up there and watch us and we'll put this stuff on camera. But I want you to click on that link I gave you, Jeff, which is going to pull up a little Canva display I created of the stuff that I did. So the first thing I did was I decided to work with Jeff because I love Jeff. Jeff's my partner, and Jeff is so photogenic and takes so many pictures that I thought fucking around with his image on AI would be just a perfect way to spend the day. So the first thing I did is I tried to put him into The Godfather. And I took this image of Jeff. I took 4 pictures of him. It created a character, a Jeff character I can use in all the porns I want to make from moving forward. But for now, I just decided to put him into The Godfather. And I took a classic image from The Godfather and made it Jeff instead of Marlon Brando. And I think he would have been better.
I'm flattered. I would have gone maybe like with Sonny,
Yeah,
maybe even a little Fredo.
I
But to
considered.
go
I
with, but to
considered
go
all
with
this.
Don Vito, I thank you.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. But Jeff's response when I showed him this image was to tell me he needs to dye his hair
My
and
God.
feel
At least
sad
this
about
is
dyeing his
darker
hair.
than my hair. And then I Googled it and I'm like, Brando was when he filmed The Godfather was, I think, about a year younger than I am right now, which is
There
also,
you go. There you
God
go.
damn.
Yeah. So if you click to the next image, I decided to take care of that for you, and I dyed your hair. I think it's a pretty color. I would go with it. I recommend it.
I
But and I decided to have you lounging on the beach. I used my Jeff character. This was a one-shot prompt. Told it to do this, and it just busted this really fantastic image out. And yes, I did specify that shirt, just so you know. And then, but I it wasn't good enough for me. I feel like my partner's a rock star. So I wanted to kind of say, what would it look like if Jeff was in an arena like Bruce playing the arena? And so if you go to the next one, we did a live video. It's got
see it.
audio too if you listen to it.
I knew
Just
it was
rocking it.
Springsteen. I knew it was Springsteen.
There you go.
Which I'm
There you
like, is
go.
somebody suing from his camp? Because that's bullshit. But I knew it was Springsteen, and I like that too. So
Yeah. This makes me think that you should grow your hair out longer. That's what I would say. This looks nice. I like
I
it.
think Springsteen's hair is darker than mine too.
But I also said Jeff's not only a rock star, he's also a superhero. And I wanted to see how it worked with fast moving video. So if you look at the last image there, you can see. And I want to be clear here. I took Christopher Reeves because fuck all these other Supermen. Christopher Reeves is the only Superman in this image that sticks his hand out like this. All the rest of them, they fly like this. Who wants to fly like this? It's like a fucking seal trying to get up for air. Fuck that shit. This is the image, and that's the Superman you are. So
I like it. I like it a lot.
That's how I fucked around with AI this week.
I like it. I like it. Fuck around with AI and find out amusing shit you can do with AI. Use it in useless ways to figure out how to understand and use AI better.
Love it.
Brought to you by, now we need a big sponsor.
Yeah, exactly.
And once
exactly.
again, anything that I might have said about these big financial corporations or OpenAI or NVIDIA, I take it all back for a sponsorship.
Yes, please. We'll sell out. We'll sell out.
Adam, I mean, yeah, we're talking about
Goes
AI.
without
It kind of
saying.
feels
Goes
like we're
without
selling
saying.
out already. We have another podcast.
That's right, that's
Anonymous,
right.
where we're not selling out at all. Don't worry. So anything, Adam, wrap it up. Any show notes for this week? Any corrections?
What is the deal with the fucking terrifying cats on YouTube? Since AI has been ubiquitous, there's this surge of these videos, and we'll put some up, of cats with like muscles, like causing violence, killing babies, doing horrible shit. What is the deal with the fucking cats? That's all I got this week.
That's part of the AI psychosis. It goes hand in hand with the
exactly.
scheming. That's the first sign of a serial killer when they're young, is they torture children. So let's watch out for that.
There you go.
Two final show notes. Our brilliant producer Roman brought it to my attention that when I talked about the Babelfish or the Babelfish earlier from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, in my mind, I'm remembering the 19 or the early 80s BBC dramatization that they did of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the 6-part series that I must have watched a million times. And then also the book on tape that I feel like Douglas Adams narrated himself. And they said Babelfish, not Babelfish. So I'm curious to look that up and see which one it is. I think Roman, maybe he could be right, or maybe that it is not like the intuitive, like Tower of Babel pronunciation. Either way, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, greatest books of all time. Douglas Adams, R.I.P. That man was such a genius. I love those books. I haven't read them in forever, but the idea of a little fish that you can stick in your ear and it can translate any language across the known galaxy, fantastic stuff. And then my last show note for the week, just a little unrelated, like sort of in Gen X news, there was this article in The Ankler, which is a sort of a great newsletter about what's going on in Hollywood, talks about the practice of clipping shows and turning them into social video on like TikTok and Instagram. And I noticed that in both of my feeds, I get a lot of Breaking Bad, Sopranos, Wire, just watching it in like 90-second clips, 3-minute clips, whatever. And I get a lot of it and I always like it and I get more of it. And I'm like one of those people, I'm such a Sopranos freak that I don't know, once a year-ish or so, like I'm rewatching The Sopranos, at least a season of it. I am embarrassed at how much, well, I'm not embarrassed, I'm proud how much I've watched The Sopranos.
Humble brag.
Um, totally. But it occurs to me that I haven't done it in recently. Like I said, it's like an annual thing, or I don't know, maybe it's every 6 months. Because I think my Jones for rewatching The Sopranos is being fulfilled by these constant short clips that I get. And I wonder if that's like a change in viewing that's going on. And I wonder if anyone else is experiencing that. So just an interesting bit of food for thought there. And Adam, I think that's about it. Any final thoughts?
No, I think that'll just until next time, Jeff. Just keep flying. Just keep
Until
flying.
next time.